Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a story about a major European city freezing in the dark. Now, the official story you'll hear is that it's just an act of war. But as we're about to find out, the real reasons, well, they go way deeper. We're talking about a tangled web of corruption and big money finance that was in place long before the power ever went out.
All right, let's get right into it. What you're looking at is a real-time blackout schedule from Kyiv, set in a not-so-distant February. See all those crossed-out icons? Every single one of them is an hour without power. Just imagine a huge, modern city plunged into freezing darkness. But here's the thing, this isn't just about bombs falling. The real question we've got to ask is, why was the power grid so incredibly fragile to begin with?
Okay, so here's where the official story kicks off. We're talking about a full-blown cold emergency. On February 3rd, 2026, a huge attack hits the Darnit power plant. And this wasn't just any power plant. It was the main heat source for the whole left bank of Kyiv.
And the impact? It was absolutely catastrophic. Just like that, in an instant, 500,000 people. Gone. No heat. We're talking about folks in over 1,000 high-rise buildings, left in the freezing cold. I mean, in the dead of winter. The city was pushed right to the edge.
So that's where the official narrative pretty much ends, right? An act of war. A terrible, tragic consequence. But, and this is a big but, the sources we're digging into today say that's not the whole story. Not even close. That attack, it wasn't the cause of the crisis. It was just the trigger. The entire power grid was already a house of cards, just waiting for a breeze to knock it all down.
So this is where things get really interesting. Because what this whole situation reveals is that there was basically a war being fought on two fronts. You had the obvious one, with missiles hitting the grid. But there was another, quieter war happening, from the inside. A war against the very systems that were supposed to be keeping the lights on.
And this right here is a slide from a classified internal briefing that tells the real story. Get this, by January 2026, that's before the big attack we just talked about, a staggering 90% of the country's thermal power was already gone, destroyed or damaged. And the craziest part? This was all kept under wraps. The public was being fed this story about resilience, all while the system was actually in a total freefall.
So the big question is, why? Why was the grid so fragile? Well, an investigation by Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau, or NABU for short, points the finger at rot from within. They found this massive kickback scheme going on inside Energoatom, the state's nuclear operator. Officials were supposedly skimming millions and millions of dollars from the very contracts that were meant to make the energy sector stronger. And if you want to know the real cost of that corruption, just listen to this. It's a quote from a senior official caught on a wiretap. When someone asked about, building actual physical protection around the power plants, he just dismissed it, called it a waste of money. But of course, the money wasn't wasted. Investigators say it was just pocketed, and that left the grid and 500,000 people in Kyiv totally, completely exposed. And we're not talking about just a couple of bad apples here. Oh no, the NABU investigation literally mapped out what they called a spider web of corruption, and it went all the way to the top. Right at the center of it all, they claimed, was a guy named Timur Mindik, a close business associate of the president. And get this, investigators think someone tipped him off because he skipped town just a few hours before his home was raided. Okay, so all this rot from the inside, it didn't just happen in a bubble. It actually created the perfect opening for a whole new group of players to get in the game. And these players, they didn't see a tragedy, they saw a massive, massive opportunity. And this is where the big money, global finance enters the story. We're talking about giants like BlackRock, who started advising on what was called the Ukraine Prosperity Plan, worth a cool $800 billion. And look at the language from this briefing slide. It's pretty chilling. For these guys, the destruction of the old Soviet power grid, that wasn't a tragedy. No, it was a market opportunity, a chance to tear down old public infrastructure and replace it with shiny new privatized assets, all owned by Western firms. But you know what? The real prize wasn't even the rebuilding contracts. It was what's buried underneath the ground. See, Ukraine is sitting on one of the biggest stashes of critical minerals on the planet. We're talking lithium, titanium, uranium, you name it. The estimated value, up to $12 trillion. That's trillion with a T. And this map really lays out the long game perfectly. Getting control of these resources isn't just about Ukraine. It's way bigger than that. It's about breaking China's chokehold on the very minerals the entire world needs for the green energy transition. And wouldn't you know it, the area that needs all this reconstruction just so happens to be sitting right on top of all these priceless deposits. But here's where the story takes a really incredible turn. While all of this other stuff was going on, the corruption, the grid falling apart, these huge backroom deals, a revolutionary, totally homegrown solution to the entire energy crisis was already sitting there ready to go. It's a technology called Enhanced Geothermal Systems, EGS for short. And the idea, from a Ukrainian inventor named Vadim Chernov, was just brilliant. He said, hey, instead of having one giant, easy-to-hit power plant, why don't we build a whole network of small, powerful geothermal plants buried deep underground? You'd make them basically impossible to knock out in a single attack. I mean, just look at the difference. It's absolutely staggering. On one side, you've got the old way, one big, vulnerable target that's totally dependent on fuel from other countries. On the other side, a network of dozens of hidden sites running on free heat from the Earth itself. We're talking zero ongoing fuel costs, real, true energy independence and security. So this all leads to the biggest, most important question of all, right? If this amazing, homegrown, super resilient solution was right there on the table, why wasn't it built? Why are 500,000 people in Kyiv still freezing? And this, my friends, is where we get to the absolute heart of the matter. The final, pretty shocking layer we've been peeling back. The answer is, well, it's as simple as it is hard to believe. The inventor, Vadim Chernov, the guy with the brilliant plan to make Ukraine's energy secure, he's been sitting in a migration prison since June 2022. Just take a look at this timeline. It's telling. Chernov's detention seems almost perfectly timed with everything else we've talked about. Right when he gets taken out of the picture, this whole disaster capitalism thing really picks up steam. The corruption that was crippling the grid is just left to run wild until, boom, the whole system breaks. It feels like his solution wasn't just ignored, it was deliberately sidelined. So you have to ask, why? Why on earth would anyone suppress a solution like this? Well, the sources we're looking at suggest it's because the technology is just too good. Chernov developed this proprietary algorithm called RALF1, and it's a game changer for finding geothermal energy. And just to give you an idea of how powerful this thing is, Ukraine's own military has apparently used it to predict the path of incoming artillery with pinpoint accuracy. Wow. And that right there, according to our sources, is exactly why his solution had to be squashed. Think about it. A truly energy-independent Ukraine? It doesn't need billions in foreign loans. A decentralized system? It cuts out all those corrupt state contracts. It completely erases the market opportunity that a crisis creates. Chernov's idea basically blows up the entire business model of disaster capitalism, which, let's be honest, needs a country to stay broken for anyone to profit. So when you put it all together, Kyiv's cold crisis is so much more than just an act of war. It's really a symptom of a much deeper fight, a battle for the soul of Ukraine, really, a fight between its own brilliant minds who are offering a path to independence and this powerful network of insiders and outside interests who would rather see a future built on debt and dependency. And that leaves us with one final, and honestly, pretty chilling question. When a country's entire recovery becomes just another thing to be bought and sold, when its future is put up for sale, who really ends up paying the price?